Late one night, in an old café by the port where weary fishermen sought solace, two souls found themselves alone amidst the quiet hum of the sea breeze and the soft lapping of waves against the shore. A young man, with his head bowed and eyes fixed on nothingness, was lost in a labyrinth of despair. Oblivious to his surroundings, he sat at a table burdened by the weight of unmet dreams, while beside him, a wise old man gazed into the distance, his weathered face reflecting a lifetime of silent struggles and forgotten hopes. With a moment of silent contemplation, the old man decided to approach, recognizing a kindred spirit in need of guidance. Taking a seat beside the young man, the old man ordered a black coffee and waited patiently. Finally, he gently inquired,
"What troubles your heart, young man?"
The young man, startled from his reverie, hesitated before pouring out his troubles.
"I've put everything into my new venture, but I've fallen short. I fear I'm headed towards complete failure, with no light at the end of this dark tunnel."
Listening intently, the old man nodded, his expression one of understanding and empathy. When the young man finished, the old man took a deep breath, ready to share a tale that had inspired many in times of adversity.
"Once upon a time, there was a young man much like yourself. He was the youngest son of a merchant with German roots. His father wanted him to study law, but he wanted to go to sea instead. His family disagreed with this choice, believing it was better to live a simple and secure life. At first, the young man obeyed his father, but he couldn't resist the temptation to sail. He finally set off on a ship to London with a friend. During a storm, they almost died, and his friend decided to abandon sea travel. However, our hero continued his journey and became a merchant on a London-bound ship. His first trip was successful financially, so he planned another. He left his early profits with a friendly widow, and embarked on the second voyage. Unfortunately, this journey did not go well. The ship was captured by Moorish pirates, and the young man was enslaved in the North African town of Salé. While fishing one day, he and a slave boy managed to escape and sailed along the African coast. They were rescued by a kind Portuguese captain, who bought the slave boy from the young man and took this latter to Brazil. In Brazil, the young man started a plantation and became prosperous. He was keen on using slave labor for economic gain, so he went on a slave-gathering expedition to West Africa. However, he ended up shipwrecked off the coast of Trinidad. The young man soon learned he was the sole survivor of the expedition and sought shelter and food for himself. He returned to the wreck's remains 12 times to salvage guns, powder, food, and other items. On shore, he found goats he could graze for meat and built himself a shelter. He erected a cross that he inscribed with the date of his arrival, and made a notch every day in order never to lose track of time. He also kept a journal of his household activities, noting his attempts to make candles, his lucky discovery of sprouting grain, and his construction of a cellar, among other events. One day, he fell ill and experienced a religious illumination. He realized that God had delivered him from his earlier sins. After recovering, he made a survey of the area, and discovered he was on an island. He found a pleasant valley abounding in grapes, where he built a shady retreat. He began to feel more optimistic about being on the island, describing himself as its king. He trained a pet parrot, took a goat as a pet, and developed skills in basket weaving, bread making, and pottery. He cut down an enormous cedar tree and built a huge canoe from its trunk, but he discovered that he could not move it to the sea. After building a smaller boat, he rowed around the island but nearly perished when swept away by a powerful current. Reaching shore, he heard his parrot calling his name and was thankful for being saved once again. He spent several years in peace. One day, the young man was shocked to discover a man's footprint on the beach. He concluded it must belong to one of the cannibals said to live in the region. Terrified, he armed himself and remained on the lookout for cannibals. He also built an underground cellar in which to herd his goats at night, and devised a way to cook underground. One evening, he heard gunshots, and the next day he was able to see a ship wrecked on his coast. It was empty when he arrived on the scene to investigate. He once again thanked Providence for having been saved. Soon afterward, he discovered that the shore had been strewn with human carnage, apparently the remains of a cannibal feast. He was alarmed and continued to be vigilant. Later, he caught sight of many cannibals heading for shore with their victims. One of the victims was killed. Another one, waiting to be slaughtered, suddenly broke free and ran toward the young man's dwelling. The young man protected him, killing one of the pursuers and injuring the other, whom the victim finally killed. Well armed, the young man defeated most of the cannibals on shore. The victim vowed total submission to the young man in gratitude for his liberation. He named him Friday, to commemorate the day on which his life was saved, and took him as his servant. Finding Friday cheerful and intelligent, the young man taught him some English words and some elementary Christian concepts. Friday, in turn, explained that the cannibals are divided into distinct nations and that they only eat their enemies. Friday also informed him that the cannibals saved the men from the shipwreck he witnessed earlier, and that those men, Spaniards, were living nearby. Friday expressed a longing to return to his people, and the young man was upset at the prospect of losing Friday. He then entertained the idea of making contact with the Spaniards, and Friday admitted that he would rather die than lose the young man. The two built a boat to visit the cannibals' land together. Before they had a chance to leave, they were surprised by the arrival of some cannibals in canoes. The cannibals were holding 3 victims, one of whom was in European dress. Friday and the young man killed most of the cannibals and released the European, a Spaniard. Friday was overjoyed to discover that another of the rescued victims was his father. The 4 men returned to the young man's dwelling for food and rest. He prepared to welcome them into his community permanently. He sent Friday's father and the Spaniard out in a canoe to explore the nearby land. 8 days later, the sight of an approaching English ship alarmed Friday. The young man was suspicious. Friday and the young man watched as 11 men took 3 captives on shore in a boat. 9 of the men explored the land, leaving 2 to guard the captives. Friday and the young man overpowered these men and released the captives, one of whom was the captain of the ship, which had been taken in a mutiny. Friday and the young man confronted the mutineers, telling them that all may escape with their lives except the ringleader. The men surrendered. The young man and the captain pretended that the island was an imperial territory, and that the governor had spared their lives in order to send them all to England to face justice. After that, he boarded the ship to return to England. There, he found his family had deceased except for 2 sisters. His widow friend had kept his money safe, and after traveling to Lisbon, he learned from the Portuguese captain that his plantations in Brazil had been highly profitable. He arranged to sell his Brazilian lands. Wary of sea travel, he attempted to return to England by land but was threatened by bad weather and wild animals in northern Spain. Finally arriving back in England, he received word that the sale of his plantations had been completed, and that he had made a considerable fortune. After donating a portion to the widow and his sisters, he was restless and considered returning to Brazil, but he was dissuaded by the thought that he would have to become Catholic. He married, and his wife died. He finally departed for the East Indies as a trader. He revisited his island, finding that the Spaniards were governing it well and that it had become a prosperous colony. My boy, that young man was none other than Robinson Crusoe. Now, let me explain why I shared this story. Robinson Crusoe embodies a crucial lesson: in every setback, an opportunity awaits. Keep pushing forward, and remember, even in the darkest moments, success is within reach. One of Crusoe's defining traits is his uniqueness. He stayed true to his values and pursued his ideas despite opposition from all sides. If your ideas are in line with your deepest principles and values, it is important to follow them, even if others do not immediately understand them. Robinson's adventures reflect the essence of modern entrepreneurship. He exemplified an extraordinary entrepreneurial spirit by setting out on a sea voyage as a young man to pursue his dreams of becoming a sailor and amassing wealth. When marooned on a desert island, he refused to accept his circumstances passively. Instead, he displayed strong initiative in seeking ways to survive and enhance his situation. Beyond demonstrating remarkable initiative, Robinson exhibited leadership qualities. Stranded alone, he assumed full responsibility for every decision, autonomously navigating challenges akin to the leadership roles required in entrepreneurial ventures. Furthermore, following the shipwreck, Robinson demonstrated exceptional adaptability and creativity to ensure his survival. He utilized his skills to construct shelter, hunt, farm, and fashion tools, a testament to the creativity and adaptability required of entrepreneurs facing changing circumstances. Robinson effectively managed the island's limited resources, employing strategic foresight to secure his long-term survival. Moreover, he undertook the challenge of surviving on a hostile island by efficiently managing his financial resources. The salvaged tools, weapons, and food became vital assets for his survival. Prudent allocation of resources was crucial, prompting Crusoe to develop a budget to regulate daily resource consumption and prevent shortages. He also implemented long-term strategies, such as cultivating crops, fortifying his dwelling, and educating his companion for sustainable support. Looking at another perspective, Robinson confronted numerous challenges and risks during his tenure on the desert island. From the outset, he assessed the potential hazards of his surroundings, storms, wild animals, and hostile natives, and took measures to prepare for them by stocking provisions for times of scarcity and crafting tools and weapons for defense. Recognizing the importance of preparation in mitigating unforeseen risks, Robinson's decision to construct a boat to explore neighboring islands exemplified a calculated risk-taking approach aimed at long-term improvement, a trait synonymous with successful entrepreneurs. Furthermore, throughout his island sojourn, Robinson exhibited a commitment to continual learning and self-improvement. He acquired skills in agriculture, cultivating crops and domesticating animals, while familiarizing himself with the island's geography, flora, and fauna to optimize resource utilization. This aptitude for learning empowered him to better manage risks over time, mirroring a crucial trait of entrepreneurs in a dynamic business landscape that demands adaptability and ongoing development.
The young man, emboldened by the old man's words, felt a spark of determination reignite within him. As they parted ways that night, the young man carried with him not only the story of Robinson Crusoe but also the wisdom and encouragement needed to navigate the turbulent seas of entrepreneurship. In that old café by the port, amidst the whispers of the sea and the timeless tales of resilience, a transformative encounter had taken place, one that would shape the young man's journey towards realizing his dreams, guided by the lessons of the past and the wisdom of an unexpected mentor.